Enterprise City Schools, and to use the words of the State Superintendent of Education, is a gem that anyone in this state would give anything to have. And I think we ought to take pride in that. We ought to be encouraged by that. And we ought to realize that our students are being well served. I was in the room with a lot of coaches from around the state, several superintendents from around the state, the officials from the High School Athletic Association, and then just other guests. What was disappointing to me was to spend my time with those people, being so proud of Enterprise students. I didn't have the first comment about that. Every comment that was made to me was, what in the world is going on in Enterprise? Anyone, whether it be a board member or a citizen of this city, or a parent or a grandparent, whatever the case may be, and we participate in activities that create a negative impression and a negative story about Enterprise, it hurts every kid in the system. It hurts every professional employee, every certified person, and every employee of the system. It just isn't conducive to running the kind of system that I know a lot of people in this community want and demand. If you've got a problem that you want to address, my door is open. It's always open. Let's find a way to redress our grievances if we have to, and do it in a manner that doesn't attract the negative image that we're currently working on. The school system is not supposed to be in the political arena. That's not what we want to do. But we have to survive. We have to get through this. We have to move forward. And we have to stay focused on improving education for every kid, because they are dependent upon it. And it's in that light that I'm going to ask the board to proceed with a policy that they've ignored and I think has been adopted for a long period of time. That you have a board policy of how people proceed to address the board. And I'm going to ask the board to begin enforcing that policy. It doesn't refuse to let people participate in the meetings. But what it does is create a structure that brings some order to the process.
Understanding of the public portion of your meeting, which you addressed, really involves two different issues. One is the public function of this board as it is addressed by the Alabama Open Meetings Act, which calls for and requires the business of the board to be conducted in an open and public way. In that regard, the law does not necessarily permit nor allow public comment. It is an observation and participation. That is the Alabama law. This system, however, has adopted a different view. At least as far back as 2010, the policies are on the books now, and I think before that, you have an internal policy with the Enterprise school system that is policy 2.22. And that policy allows and in fact encourages public participation in school board meetings, although the Open Meetings Act does not. And it has set forth some criteria and process under which you follow that. It simply requires that someone contact your office, Mr. Baker, and prior to the board meeting and submit a statement in writing of the business that they choose to bring before the board. And that request then is suggested as an agenda item in a regular meeting. The president of the board shall read that. And if there's concern on behalf of the board as to whether or not that's business that's on the agenda that should be addressed, then this school board has the opportunity to decide whether to go forward with that conversation or not.
I thought, though, that this occurred at the last regular meeting, unless you're on the agenda, no one from the public is allowed to address. And that's a change of pretty long-standing tradition that's been held, and as Mr. Bates referred to, it's policy manual section 2.22. It's traditionally, the public's been invited. If you want to be on the agenda, you have the right to be. It has not always been the practice that there would be as much maybe, for lack of a better word, disorganization, length of people wanting to get up and express their views as there have been over the last 2 or 3 months. There won't always be that, either, if it was allowed to remain just as it was. I'm not surprised at your intent to change that, so let the public be aware if you want to address the school board in advance, you need to approach the superintendent, make that request, and state the purpose of it. It states the superintendent shall have a right of initiative, including professional matters and matters pertaining to personnel, purchase of supplies, courses of study, student activities, building programs, and preparation of the budget. Okay, you've got one board member who has a unique understanding of this, which became policy several years ago. If he wouldn't mind sharing with us when and why this clarification was adopted as policy, when it was. Would you be so kind to share that with us, Mr. Connor?
Well, Joe Paul, forgive me, but you do everything that you can to try to attack me, but I'm not going to take the bait. I'm sorry.
The previous service by Mr. Cotter, Jack Rutland was superintendent. When he was a superintendent, a personnel issue arose with Mr. Rutland deciding and recommending in a manner contrary to what Mr. Cotter thought should be done. Mr. Cotter subsequently attempted to have Mr. Rutland fired. He was hired, by the way, when Mr. Cotter was a member of that board, which led, with the attempt to fire, which led the school board attorney, Ken Fuller, advising that this clarification, appearing as policy number 3.22, item number 6, be adopted as policy. Not only has Mr. Cotter recently acted in a similar manner by meeting with an employee who was non-renewed, as has been previously pointed out, but threatened that he would have the employee in question placed back in the classroom and in the same school where the employee had been. The threat included, I have 3 votes, and with a new member coming on the board, I will have 4 votes. This behavior or conduct is unwelcome and should be prohibited by any board member. It undermines the trust, confidence, judgment, and leadership ability by our community, our principals, supervisors, the superintendent, and of the board.
In public, you have repeatedly stated that the Enterprise City Schools standing academically, while once having been in the top 10 statewide, had in recent years declined. People hear those kinds of comments, Ross. With I myself having served in the system for the better part of 30 years, with professionals who in numerous cases served long before I came here, we're greatly perplexed by such a novel revelation. We'd like for you to know that we have searched diligently to find some form of documentation that such a ranking system has ever existed, and we have found none whatsoever. With these thoughts in mind, I respectfully request of you, Mr. Cotter, that within the next few days you provide to our public the source from which you referenced our top 10 ranking of the past. Can you do that? Can you do that, sir?
Let me respond to that.
Okay.
Bob, I'm not, like I say, I'm not going to get caught up in the fray, but you need to understand, you were here when our former superintendent stated that we were number 19, and we had another former superintendent.
That makes no difference what I'm saying.
Of course it makes a difference. That's
Not at all.
That's what it should, then you're not thinking. Listen to me. Let me finish my statement. Then we have another former superintendent to stand up in this very room and say number 19 is not good enough. So I'm not.
I don't buy that anymore than what you have said.
I'm not going to get into it with you. That's
So you're saying,
that's
you're saying
that's
that
all
you,
I'm saying.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
The public needs to know the source from which you got that.
I just told you, move on.
Sir?
I just told you exactly what was said and where it came from, and you know. So let's move on, Bob. I mean, we know what.
Let's get back to the truth.
That's what we just did.
All right, finally, and most importantly, let me say that if you, as the president of this school board, truly have as your number one objective to return us to some version of the top 10, our people are going to need to know precisely how we got there, whenever it was that we got there. They're going to have to know that. And we're going to need for you and the other board members to ensure us that we have a superintendent who you can trust to be concerned with the many other things other than some sort of ranking that go into the education of a child.